Kia ora, welcome to Bustairs. It's time to start work on another countertop. This time it's for the bar and we'll go above the toilet. So come and have a look at it. So I've reconfigured the garage a bit. Shifted this car into the middle so that I can get it out to sell it. You know, I want to buy an FTO, one lady owner. So over here is just a little working area. Tool cabinet finally in place. But I've shifted my large work space over to the other side of the garage. And now it's time to start on the next piece of Macrocarpa. Solar panels there in the background. 3 of them, 250 watts each. So this one has a spectacularly live edge, which I'm actually going to have to trim back a little bit because it's a little too thin, and a huge hole in the middle, which I don't yet know what I'm going to do with. It's also a rather weird shape, very narrow at one end, very wide at the other, but that suits for where I'm going to put it. So first I'm going to pick off all the bark and dig out some of these holes and see what we've got. So much like the bench I've already done, I start off by basically just digging the bark and loose bits out of the holes with a screwdriver. So I've done a bit of trimming, trimmed a bit off the edges, ripped out the holes, got all the bark and stuff out of them. Now what I think I'm going to do is paint the inside of these black so that they are nice and dark, and see how that looks. Make it a little different to the other side. Nice holes, huh? So this is the plan, really just about getting the holes dark. Of course it's kind of hard to see. This one kind of shows it because it's just a dark hole. Likewise here. Really just want the holes to have a dark background for the epoxy on this side of the table. It's a funny concept, best practice. You know, like in an ideal world that's what you'd do. But this isn't an ideal world, so here's what I've done. So I have these big cracks, and I don't want them. But if I try to fill them with epoxy from the top surface, it's just going to drip right through them and be a waste of effort really. So I've siliconed them up. On the bottom side, which no one will ever really look at, I've put silicone also up the edges here so that I can capture all the epoxy I put into them and it'll stay there. That's the plan. Also there's a few holes which on the last slab, these knots, whilst they weren't really a hole all the way through, they did leak and epoxy came right out the bottom. So I have sealed the back of them with silicone. Now I reckon that's going to work. Only time will tell, but it's worth a crack, right? And if you're watching me, it's probably because you don't know how to do this, and maybe this is how to do this. So I've thrown in a first layer of epoxy into the cracks. Now this is the top of the table. I know it looks pretty ugly now, but as I've found, it planes off nice. So I've just tried to fill some of the cracks. I'm not worried about the big holes at this stage. And as you can see, it soaks well into the cracks. A little bit of gold on some of the surfaces that are going to look quite nice, I think. So now it's just a case of watching for the bubbles to come through over the next little while and popping them with the torch like this. That's my second pour done. Some of these cracks are deep though. This one's actually not looking too bad. Maybe needs one more load near the end here. This one's not too bad either. A couple of these little tiny ones that just suck the epoxy in. Some of them that looked deeper are not. They're turning out spectacular. But others, like this crack around here, is so deep. We need to double check underneath that it's not leaking. And this big long one. I've poured an incredible amount of epoxy into these cracks. Now, I know they're not leaking because I have checked underneath and my silicone seal on the bottom is working very well. Just waiting for this lot to dry and removing any bubbles that come up. So I've decided that the epoxy won't stick to these plastic bags, so I've wrapped some plywood bits in plastic bags and I'm going to silicone around these holes and then put my plywood on top like so and clamp it down so that I can fill the holes from the other side and get a layer of epoxy that's up on the top. What I'm trying to achieve here is basically just a half-filled hole. Not so much half-filled, but I want it to have a resin top or an epoxy top, but be hollow underneath. And I think it's working. Obviously got a little way to go yet, and this one here has leaked all over the floor. It'll be a day or so before I get to flip it back over now. This is the bottom. So where I put the silicone to stop it seeping through the cracks has worked pretty well. There was one spot that I didn't silicone that has leaked quite badly, and a little gap that I missed here, but in general that's worked really well and has kept all of the epoxy in the holes. So now it's a waiting game, and I've just got to pop some bubbles. So some interesting outcomes. This one here hasn't actually set yet, which isn't surprising, it shouldn't be. But this one here has, and it's got a pattern from the plastic, but I'm not too worried about that because I intend to go over it anyway. And it looks quite cool. This is the one that drained out, so that's just a big sticky hole. Now let's see how this went. Not too bad. Obviously has leaked a little bit here, but in general it looks kind of like I hoped it would look. Now this one here has got a different type of plastic bag and it's stuck like a stuck thing, so I'm going to have to try and peel that off. Well yeah, it does matter which plastic bags you use. These ones have even left the printing on the epoxy. Now I'm not quite sure what went wrong with one of those pours. It could have been the type of plastic, may have reacted with the epoxy and made it set unusually fast. It got extremely hot, set within minutes, and subsequently cracked. It could also have been, that was the very end of my epoxy mix. So although I'm using this pump system, which means that I get a metered dose, I got like 4 and a bit pumps out of the epoxy and 4 and a bit pumps out of the hardener, and it's possible that there was more hardener than epoxy, and so the balance got a little bit wrong just for that last batch, which was just that one hole. It's also possible that it was something to do with the thickness, because it's a hole where the top was a lot more narrow than the bottom. As I was filling it, it didn't appear to be filling up, and then all of a sudden it was quite full. And so that was probably the thickest pour I've done, maybe over an inch thick. Could be any one of those factors, but it went wrong. So I'm going to have to dig it out and start again, but that's for another video. So thanks for watching this one. Hang about, and I'll show you how I fix this, and click all the buttons and like and subscribe and all that jazz, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Take care, mā te rā.